Besides Mussolini, Stalin, and Hitler, there was a fourth dictator ruling Europe during the World War II. And that dictator was Francisco Franco. He took over the leadership of Spain after the Spanish Civil War in 1939. He was the only European dictator to continue to rule until the 70s. Hitler killed himself in 1945, Mussolini was shot by partisans in 1945, and Stalin died of a stroke in 1953, killed by the fact that he killed all the doctors. Francisco Franco came from a naval family and wanted to follow the footsteps of its forefathers. Francisco Franco Bohamonde was born on December the 4th, 1892 in Ferrol, Galicia, to a seafaring family. His family had been naval officers for 6 generations. Nicola Franco y Salgado Araujo. Franco entered the naval secondary school at the age of 12 and hoped to follow in the footsteps of his ancestors. But in 1907, the Spanish government, crippled by the Spanish-American War, suspended admission of new recruits to the Naval Academy, forcing Franco to join the Army Academy instead. If this would have been different, Francisco Franco wouldn't have been put in the situation of becoming a dictator, and Spain's history would have been different. But who knew? General Francisco Franco led national forces to victory against the Republicans during the Spanish Civil War that lasted from 1936 to 1939, heralding a 36-year dictatorship with Franco at the helm. He seized power during the bloody Spanish Civil War when, with the help of Hitler and Mussolini, his nationalist forces overthrew the democratically elected left-wing government of the Second Republic. Franco named himself El Caudillo, or the leader. He persecuted political opponents. Still, his rule became more liberal in later years, and Spain modernized under his rule. He volunteered to fight in Spanish Morocco. This colony was wrecked by insurgency. In one single attack, 7,000 Moroccan Spanish soldiers being killed by Moroccan rebels. Franco fought for many years in Morocco, and he earned a reputation as a formidable officer. He was wounded several times during the fighting and received several medals. Still, he wasn't all good. Once, in Spanish Morocco, a soldier mocked his squeaky voice. Franco drew out his revolver, pointed at the soldier, shot the soldier in the head in front of the entire unit. Before coming to power, Franco was banished to a remote post in the Canary Islands because of the opposition to the new left-wing government. Franco initially hesitated in his support of the proposed military coup planned by several generals. He only became fully committed following the assassination of the leading monarchist José Calvo Sotelo. After the death of the original leader of the coup in a plane crash, Franco was appointed as the head of the coup and overall commander of the Spanish nationalist forces. Franco made contact with Hitler and Mussolini, securing arms and other financial support that would continue throughout the Spanish Civil War. The Germans and Italians supplied troops and planes to Franco's forces and helped to tilt the balance in his favor. During and after the war, Franco killed many left-wing supporters and sympathizers. Many thousands of communists, socialists, and anarchists were executed on the orders of Franco, and many more imprisoned or forced into exile. He forgot that he didn't get such a harsh treatment when he was the opposing force. Also, in Spain, under Franco's rule, from the Second World War onward, he opened 300 concentration camps. He imprisoned there up to 1 million political opponents and dissidents. Fortunately, unlike Hitler, he didn't open gas chambers. As a result of Francisco Franco's leadership during the White Terror period of the Spanish Civil War, up to 200,000 people died. Franco was responsible for up to 50,000 more deaths due to forced labor, concentration camps, and shootings. Like his ally and fellow dictator Adolf Hitler, he had more things or less things in common that you'd think. Franco reportedly only had one testicle, just like Hitler. A book released in 2009 recounted how Franco had lost a testicle in battle when he was wounded in the lower abdomen at Albituz near Ceuta in 1916. His doctor's granddaughter confirmed to a biographer that Franco had confided in her grandfather about having only one testicle, and that he had been worried it would affect his ability to have children. It's not sure if on the 23rd of August 1940, when he had his secret meeting with Adolf Hitler, this topic was opened. They met in southern France to discuss the possibility of Spain joining the Axis powers in World War II. The two men spent 7 hours discussing Spain's condition for joining the war, but left without an agreement. Reportedly because Hitler thought that Franco was making too many demands. They included handing territories, including Gibraltar, over to Spain after the war, as well as the supply of food, petrol, and arms to help Spain, which was at the time struggling after its own civil war. war. During the war, the Luftwaffe had bombed the Basque town of Guernica. The attack was immortalized later in Picasso's most famous work. But Franco did help the Axis, whose members Italy and Germany had supported him during the Spanish Civil War, in various ways. In this manner, Spain is often seen as semi-Axis power, even without military getting involved. Despite ideological sympathy, Franco was cautioned to the German powers. He stationed field armies in the Pyrenees to deter Axis occupation of the Iberian Peninsula. The Spanish policy frustrated Axis proposals. Much of the reason Spain was reluctant to join the Axis powers was its reliance on American imports. Spain was still recovering from a civil war, and Franco knew his armed forces would not be able to defend the Canary Islands and the Spanish Morocco from a British attack. Still, in 1941, Franco approved the recruitment of volunteers to Germany on the guarantee that they only fight against the Soviet Union and not against the Western Allies. This resulted in the formation of the Blue Division, which fought as part of the German army on the Southern Front between 1941 and 1944. Still, Spanish policy had to revert to strict neutrality as the tide of the war started to tilt against the Axis powers. American pressure in 1944 for Spain to stop tungsten exports to Germany and to withdraw the Blue Division led to an oil embargo which forced Franco to yield. Yielding aside, after the war, not everything was forgotten. Spain was not allowed to join the newly created United Nations because of the wartime support for the Axis, and Spain was isolated by many other countries until the mid-1950s. Country progress would turn this around, we'll see later on in the video. Still, there are some decisions in Spain that remain until today as a reminder of Franco's and Hitler's friendship. During World War II, Franco put Spain's clock back an hour in solidarity with his Nazi allies and never changed them back. This led to Spain being technically in the wrong time zone. It should be on GMT like London and Lisbon, but instead it's on Central European time. This time shift means that Spain has dark mornings and late evenings. They have the famous late supper because of this decision. On the not so nice front, again, Franco banned regional languages. As part of Franco's mission to stamp out cultural diversity in the hope of promoting Spanish nationalism, he severely restricted the country's regional languages, more or less banning Basque, Catalan, and even the language of his own region, Galicia. He banned regional names for newborn babies, banned the teaching of regional languages in schools, and ruled that all official business had to be carried out in Spanish. He went on to promote Spain's most famous symbols. He really wanted to promote a united nationalist vision of Spain, and one weapon in his arsenal was the use of typically Spanish symbols to represent the country to the outside world. He promoted bullfighting and flamenco. Even though flamenco is a regional Andalusian tradition, these two remain to this day Spain's most powerful symbols and stereotypes. But that's on purpose. He was a pioneer in the tourism industry. In the 1960s, Spain was the second fastest growing economy in the world, first behind Japan, but that's not for good reasons. It was thanks to virtually non-existing regulations, low taxes, cheap workforce, and the banning of strikes. International companies began setting up shop in Spain, boosting the country's economy in what became known as the Spanish miracle. Gibraltar, if you look at it on the map, is a really strange country. It should be part of Spain. It's right there, but it's owned by the British. It has a really nice airport between the country and the rest of Spain, meaning that you can't really enter the country. The Brits made sure that the country remains theirs. Gibraltar is Britain's tiny overseas territory and has been a long disputed territory. Queen Elizabeth's visit to Gibraltar in 1964 was seen as an insult by Franco, who thereafter implemented a series of restrictions. Spain took its sovereignty claim to the United Nations in the 1960s, arguing that Gibraltar was rightfully Spanish. Spain's claims was rejected by the UN, and Franco closed the border in 1969. The border will not fully reopen until 1985, 10 years after Franco died. Despite Franco's fear of not being able to have children, he had a child, a girl, Maria del Carmen Martinez Bordiu y Franco. She unfortunately died at the age of 91 on December 2017 in Madrid, Spain. Her husband, Cristobal Martinez Bordiu, was a prominent heart surgeon and carried out the first heart transplant operation in Spain in 1968. Many of Franco's grandchildren are members of Spain's nobility to this day. Maria del Carmen Martinez Bordiu y Franco, second Duchess of Franco, is commonly known as simply Carmen Martinez Bordiu, is a Spanish aristocrat and social figure today. His resting place is one of the creepiest places you can visit, and people do visit in Spain. Franco had the Valley of the Fallen built to commemorate those who died during the Spanish Civil War. But a huge basilica and cross looming over the mountainside north of Madrid have become known as symbols of the man himself. He is buried there and is the only person among 33 other soldiers that hasn't died during the Spanish Civil War. It remains a pilgrimage site for Francois to this day. The Valley of the Fallen remains an eerie reminder of Spain's dark times, the days of war and dictatorship. Before he died, Franco asked King Juan Carlos to become head of state. It wasn't his first choice. This happened after his heir to the Spanish throne was assassinated by a group. That's all for today. If you are from Spain, tell me, how is Spain these days? I've never worked or visited the country. July and August are not really good months to visit Spain. It's really hot. It gets really hot in Spain. That's all for today. I'd like to thank everybody who has subscribed. My kid says ow because he wants my attention, not because he's hurt. That's all. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. More dictators coming in the future. I'm Alex, and until next time, beware of falling apples.